Chapter 20 A Long Night. I always thought Ryan would be more of a dog person, Gavin mused quietly after nearly 20 minutes of anxious silence. Seriously? You're still on that? Michael exclaimed loud enough so the rest of the crew could hear. They looked at him inquisitively. I'm just curious, Gavin started defensively. Michael jumped in. For some inexplicable fucking reason, Gavin wants to know if Ryan really has a cat. Lindsay laughed. A cat? That man is like a magnet for rescue animals. He's got a fucking menagerie. How do you even know that? Gavin asked, bewildered. We talk? A lot of it comes back to cats. Everything comes back to cats with you. Michael shook his head with a grin that was more affectionate than disapproving, and sighed. The nurse, Violet, returned from the emergency operating theater to the sight of 7 heavily armed criminals and their terrified hostage, standing awkwardly in the corridor, looking a mixture of worry and amusement. In all her years as a nurse, it still wasn't even close to the strangest thing she'd had to deal with. You can't just be standing around out here like that. You'll make the other patients uncomfortable. Come with me. Violet motioned towards a door next to the operating theater and led them in, ever mindful that Trevor and Matt still had their guns trained on Sean. They were led up to the viewing room, usually reserved for medical students, with rows of seats and a large glass window that allowed them to see into the operating theater, where Ryan was surrounded by a team of busy, bloody surgeons and nurses. You're lucky you got him here as quickly as you did. He's lost a lot of blood. The bullet damaged some major arteries in his leg, but it went right through. There's minimal damage to the surrounding tissue. He's lucky the bone looks like it's still intact, although they're going to x-ray for fractures after they get him stabilized. Right now, the surgeons are going to perform a graft to repair the femoral artery, which means they need to take some healthy tissue from his other leg and use it to patch up the damaged artery. Then, they're going to give him some fluids to get his blood pressure and volume back up and see how his other injuries look. It's going to be a long night and probably a few more days here in recovery to see how he holds up. She was upfront and honest with them, just as she would be with any other patient's family. Jeff was curt in return. We don't have that much time, lady. Violet showed no signs of being intimidated by the armed, tattooed man in a suit and sneakers. You don't have much of a choice. Without the surgery, he'll probably lose his leg, if he doesn't bleed to death first. Now, if you don't mind, it might be after midnight, but I've still got other patients to deal with. She motioned to Sean, and we're down a triage nurse. There was a quiet sense of admiration in the crew. Nobody moved to stop her as she left the room. Jeff shifted uncomfortably. We haven't got long before the cops will be here, he pointed out. Even if the hospital staff haven't, surely someone's alerted them by now. I gotta get my car out of here. Who's coming with me and who's staying with Ryan? If you come with me, there's someone we have to deal with. Michael's eyes widened, catching on immediately. You got Shadles, didn't you? Jeff nodded. I have no idea what state he's in, but I'm gonna see what I can get out of him. Lindsay and Michael looked at each other, seemingly exchanging 1,000 words in a single glance, and Michael's face softened at her slight smile. I got this under control. We'll stay here, Lindsay confirmed, Michael nodding in agreement. As much as I'd love to be there to fucking take Shadles apart, I'd rather catch up with my wife. He looked unashamedly, adoringly up at Lindsay. I swear you're getting soft, Michael, Jeff said teasingly. But fair enough. We might need your explosives here later anyway. Sean's head whipped around at that, but he remained silent. Matt, Trevor, are you guys good to stay with us? Lindsay asked. Sure, Lindsay. Trevor's big brown eyes lit up, a grin spreading over his face at the prospect of being involved in some of the main crew's shenanigans. Matt didn't look quite as thrilled, but smirked and nodded. If this is an invitation to the three-way, it is not, Michael snapped. I'm still in. We got this. Gavin, little Jay? Jeff asked. I could use the help. Jeremy had his forehead pressed to the glass of the viewing window, lightly fogging under his breath. Yeah, I'll help. You got it. He still had a hard time tearing his eyes away from the surgery. Gavin, on the other hand, hadn't been able to bring himself to even look at the surgery, keeping his back to the glass. I'm coming with you, Jeff. Hospitals make me feel ill. Jeff nodded. Yeah, me too. So, Jeremy, Gavin, and I will go back to the safe house and deal with Shadles. You shouldn't have too many issues with hostages in a hospital. He deliberately looked at Sean, the young nurse, quietly sitting in the corner, being remarkably well behaved. As long as everyone plays it cool, no one has to get hurt, so that should buy you and Ryan some time. We'll sort out an exit strategy with Jack from the outside before things get too serious. Michael, Lindsay, keep us in the know. Everyone cool? They all nodded. Cool. Jeremy finally pulled himself away from the glass and followed Gavin and Jeff towards the exit. Hey, Jeff, Michael called after them, his eyes going dark. Make him suffer. As they left the hospital, the sound of approaching sirens made them all jump and spin, arms at the ready as an ambulance pulled into emergency. Fuck me! Goddamn ambulance! Jeff yelled, adrenaline pumping. Oh my god, Jeff, that scared the hell out of me, Jeremy admitted. Gavin giggled nervously. As they reached the car, they heard a noise coming from the trunk. Jeremy put a hand on the car, feeling the movement inside. I think Shadles might be awake. There was a stifled groan as Jeff unlocked the car and made for the driver's side door. I think it's a good time to get going, then. No sooner had he said it, the muffled moans morphed into animalistic cries of agony, and the car started rocking violently. Gavin scoffed at the noise. Jeff, what did you bloody do to him? Jeff shrugged. I only kicked him in the head. Lawrence may have shot him in the ankle. Well, he shot his ankle. There wasn't much left of it when we put him in the car. Gavin squirmed. Ugh, that's gross. I don't even want to think about that. Well, too bad. I'm going to need your help getting him out of the trunk. I might throw up on him, Jeff. Gavin was starting to gag just thinking about it. Knock yourself out. I won't stop you. Gavin got in the passenger seat and twisted around to scoop his laptop out of the back seat where he'd left it on the way to the warehouse. Jeremy jumped in the back and Jeff cranked the radio, some big classic rock music that nearly drowned out the cries of Shadles. What are we going to do with him? Jeremy asked, jerking a thumb towards the back of the car. Jeff's mustache twitched. I don't know. He tapped his hands on the steering wheel as they pulled out onto the street. All right, let's recap. What do we know about these guys so far? Jeremy leaned forward so he was between Jeff and Gavin. From trying to get in as Notorious DLC. Great name, by the way, Jeff interjected. Thanks, Jeremy continued. It's impossible to tell how many of them there are. Their communication network seems to be mostly web-based, with a few key players in some of the bigger crews around town. They claim to have a few connections with the LSPD, although it's hard to tell if that's a bluff. There are a few members who keep tabs on our activity. They even track our gamer tags when we're online playing. Fucking stalkers, Jeff huffed. Well, yeah, that's kind of the point. Seems they just like to show up and give us shit wherever we are. It looks like it's organized, kind of like you would a flash mob, maybe? Some of them really have it in for us, but others just seem to be going with the mob mentality. So, they're kind of like internet trolls, Gavin suggested, flipping his laptop open. Basically, yeah. Trolls with access to money and guns and possible connections to the LSPD. Who want us dead? Jeff rubbed his chin. So, how do we deal with these trolls? Gavin scoffed a laugh. You don't deal with trolls, Jeffrey. You just ignore them. All they want is attention. There was a silent beat as they processed the idea. Gavin, you might be onto something there, Jeff mused. Well, the streams were definitely about attention, Jeremy said. That was their first big public show, right? Yeah, but we shut them the fuck down. Gavin cringed at his screen. Except someone's archived the stream. Does it? Oh, those bastards. It's everywhere. What, Gavin? Use your words, Jeff pleaded. The video is everywhere, except it's been cut off at the end, right after Shadles shot Ryan. Looks like there might be a few different versions going around already. It's even on the news. Oh, you can't really see anything on the news sites. I guess that's kind of good. Gavin turned up the volume on a news report where a woman was narrating over a blurry, censored image of Ryan being tortured. The notorious gangland outfit, the fake AH crew, had been inactive for several weeks in the lead-up to tonight's events, where it is believed they broke into a jewelry store in Rockford Hills. The Los Santos Police Department responded to an anonymous call shortly after the break-in began and were confronted with the criminals. It is, at this time, believed some kind of homemade explosive device was involved in a blast that resulted in 6 police casualties and numerous injuries. The members of the fake AH crew evaded police, but a short time later, footage showing the apparent capture of one of the members known as Vagabond was released online by an anonymous group identifying themselves only as randoms. Some viewers may find the following footage disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Gavin paused the video, turning away. Fuck. God damn it. Jeff let out a long exhale. He was not ready to deal with this kind of shit yet. How the fuck are we meant to run damage control on this? There was a drawn-out pause, filled by the heavy rock music from the stereo and Shadles screaming in the trunk. Alright, hear me out on this. What if we one-upped them? Jeremy suggested. Jeff raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking, Will J? We publicly execute Shadles? Like they were going to do to Ryan? Oh God, no! That'd just be giving them the attention they want, Gavin protested. And it would make Shadles a martyr, Jeremy added. We can't risk giving them anything to fight for, to unite over. Our main advantage when we were in that warehouse was that they didn't know how to work together. So what do? We need to send them a message, Jeremy said, his voice hardening with resolve. We need to show them what happens when you mess with the fake AH crew. Show them that they haven't rattled us, but we also need to be careful not to give them any credit for it. Don't feed the trolls, Gavin agreed. And how do you suggest we do that if we don't even know who it is we're talking to? Gavin shrugged. How about we make a video? Put it up for everyone to see. Definitely sends a message. Jeremy grinned. Fight fire with fire. I like it. Gavin beamed. Jeff nodded, considering the idea. There was a brief break in the music, and screams cut through the silence. All right. That's an option, but not a priority right now. And it still doesn't help with the matter of what we do with him, Jeff said. I think we should wait to see if... Gavin started, then, conscious of his phrasing, corrected. What? Ryan says when he wakes up. I think he should at least have a say. Jeff glanced back with a smirk. Poor bastard won't know what hit him. As they pulled into the driveway of the safe house, Jeff's phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from Adam. Got a tip from a reliable source that the LSPD is planning something at St. Fiacre. Thought you'd want to know. Jeff discreetly replied, thanking him and making a mental note to keep them in mind next time they needed a hand with a big job. Funhouse had been proving themselves a solid choice for allies. One of Jeff's more interesting traits was his uncanny ability to focus on one task while his brain was working away at something entirely different in the background. It wasn't something he managed consciously, but under stress it had always come in handy. As they got out of the car and made their way up to the front door of the safe house, he had already started to formulate a plan. Jack opened the door before they could reach it, eyes scanning over the 3 of them. Is this everyone? There's one more in the trunk, Jeff replied nonchalantly. Jack looked confused for a moment before the car rocked and the yelling started again. Oh shit! You got a hostage? Not quite. Jeff got Shadles, Gavin grinned. You should, give him a hand, getting him out of the trunk and all that. Jeremy scowled at him. You just don't want to have to touch his broken ankle. It's so gross. You haven't even seen it yet, Jeff cried. Gavin gagged again at the thought. Well, fuck. Let me see if we can't knock him out with something before we bring him in then. Jack turned to go back inside and a few minutes later returned with a bottle of chloroform. He claimed to have found it in the medical supplies, but no one could explain how it got there, so the instant assumption was that it must have been Ryan's. I know the dude's a creepy motherfucker, but it sure comes in handy sometimes, Jeff mused. Between the four of them, they managed to open the trunk, subdue Shadles, and get him inside without too much trouble. His shattered ankle was bloody, but mostly contained in his boot, so Gavin managed to not throw up anywhere. They tied him to a chair and locked him in the laundry while he was still unconscious, before Jack gave him morphine to manage the pain, after some debate with Jeff. Gavin flopped down on the couch and, looking to distract himself, switched on the TV to check the news coverage and see if they'd made any headlines overnight with the warehouse. Within minutes, the sound of snoring filled the room. Jeff waved it off. Let him sleep. He could use the rest. Jack looked concerned. How's Ryan doing? Jeff had forgotten he hadn't been with them at the hospital. They took him in for surgery. Told us it'd be a long night. Michael will let us know. There's a chance the cops are going to get involved. Jack raised an eyebrow, not questioning where he'd gotten the information. Do we have a plan for evac if they do? Jeff nodded thoughtfully, with a slight smile. I'm working on it. Hey, Sean, how are you doing? Lindsay was surprisingly gentle now that everyone had calmed down and the situation was well and truly under control on their end. The sun had begun to rise, and the sound of sirens no longer caused them to jump. Ryan was out of surgery, and the doctors had been attending to his other injuries while he was in recovery. She sat facing him, out of apparent earshot of the others, who had begun to prey upon the sugary snacks from the vending machine. Matt's idea of breakfast, obviously. The kid swallowed and nodded slightly. I'm okay. He still looked scared, but he seemed more relaxed now after nobody had threatened him for a few hours. He'd been acting as their go-between during the surgery, scrubbing in to help out and relay Ryan's condition to the crew, all the while under close observation by Lindsay. She pressed a bottle of water into his hand. How's my friend doing? He cringed, taking the water and uncapping it. He's lucky you got him here when you did. The surgery went well, but he still has extensive injuries. He's on fluids to get his blood pressure and volume back to normal ranges, and he has a number of minor lacerations that need stitching. The brand on the back of his neck was mostly second-degree burns, so it will scar... Brand? Lindsay's eyebrows arched up. Sean looked surprised. Looked like he was branded, like hot iron, like you would with cattle. He tapped the base of his own neck. Just here. Probably with a heated knife or something by the looks of it. It went deep. He'll need to make sure it doesn't get infected. What was the brand of? Lindsay asked, eyes narrowing. It could be a clue. Sean chewed his lip, but didn't facilitate long under the look she gave him. It said Judas. Is he a... No. Lindsay shot him a look that could have melted steel, and he immediately bit his tongue. What else? Sean went on, tripping over his words a little with how fast he tried to walk his way out of her stare. He's also broken ribs, which means there may be complications with his respiratory system, especially after being under anesthesia. By law, we have to keep him for observation for at least 2 hours once the anesthesia wears off. Do we look like the kind of people who give a shit about the law? Lindsay interrupted. He hesitated, eyes darting back and forth, like he was trying to decide his next words. Lindsay cocked her head, but remained silent, waiting for him to volunteer whatever information he had for her. After a long pause, he almost whispered, He's the vagabond, isn't he? Lindsay nodded once, admiring his fortitude to even ask the question. He swallowed. Which means you guys are with the fakes. Lindsay nodded again, but this time her eyes narrowed. Which means that you know how much trouble we can be if things go badly here, and we don't want that. The cops are eventually going to come for us, and that's not good for anybody. So we're going to be leaving here, and we need to know what we have to do to get him through this. Otherwise, we're taking you with us, and you know that doesn't end well for you. Sean nodded, taking a long gulp of water before continuing. He's going to need constant monitoring over the next 24 hours, prophylactic antibiotics, some pretty serious medication for pain management. Sean explained the follow-up procedures and medications Ryan would need while Lindsay took careful notes. Michael, Matt, and Trevor had been gathered around the TV in Ryan's recovery room, Matt still stuffing his face with candy, when the news broadcast flashed on. Reports of Ryan's capture and a few on the destruction of the warehouse and the heist at the jewelry store had been playing all night, but now the news bar said breaking. The footage showed police and heavily armed SWAT teams gathered out in the front of the hospital. Patients were being evacuated. They looked around and noticed the rooms around them were suspiciously empty. They had assumed it was for privacy and the safety of the other patients. Shit. Michael immediately pulled out his phone and dialed Jeff's number. Hi, Jeff. So I don't know if you've seen the news, but it looks like there's a chance we're about to turn a hospital visit into a siege, Michael explained. Jeff sounded unexpectedly calm. Again, you sound surprised. Michael sighed. I guess I'm not really. It's okay. You just gotta sit tight for a couple of hours. I've got a plan. It's gonna be a big one.